Sorry, there were some technical issues again. So Rinpoche is saying about how people have different stories of the same thing that happened, and so what is the truth in that? So he's saying, how do we find the truth? How do we get there? On a very practical level, the truth is a truth among the truth. You have your experience, I have my own experience, and in order to have a more coherent view, I must open myself to the various visions that are there. And so it's only from the moment that I open myself to the various possibilities that are there around the reality that I can have a deeper and more coherent view. Otherwise, it's as if I would take a table and every side is made of a different color. And then one asks, what color is the table? Green. And then you look on the other side, no, it's yellow, but it's green or yellow. Depends from where you look at it. And because I see that it's green, I also imagine that it's green also on the other side. Then there is the fact that the table is white, but because of my own sickness, maybe I can see it of one color or the other color. So he's saying about some people that were kind of blind, and when you will, okay, they will make like a collection of used glasses, and maybe like there would be like the glasses that would kind of work for a person, and then it would be like a miracle because the people were not used to glasses at all. So wow, all of a sudden I see a part of reality. So the point is, what I see for me, it's there. But our tendency is to believe that what we perceive and what we see is the reality. And it's only since when I open to also see the others, both from the point of view of the object and the subject, that I can be able to understand better what's there. There is also another thing. I'm not able to see anything independently from myself. So if I don't know myself, then I don't know what I have in front. Because I am strongly influenced by the culture where I've grown up, by my own traumas, my own stories. I am strongly influenced by that, and inevitably I will see through that. So also that it's part. But the point here is that there is a truth among the truths, and so it's important to know also the other truths. And for me, the beauty is the more we go on and we get to know something, then the more also the reality transforms itself. It starts to get deeper, more complex. And when we go and check what is reality from a more philosophical point of view, there are two aspects. One is called the absolute reality, and the other the relative. Um, Absolute truth and relative truth. So absolute truth is something that is the same for everyone, from whoever looks at it. The only absolute truth is actually the lack of absolute truth. So we don't get too long on this, otherwise it will take a very long time to explain it deeply, because the absolute truth is the lack of intrinsic existence, the fact that nothing exists in an intrinsic way, and so whatever we see lacks an absolute truth, and so that is the absolute truth, which is the same for everything. I don't know if this is clear. It's important also to understand this, because sometimes one says, but on the absolute level and this and that, as if there would be like something magical somewhere, some absolute somewhere that you don't actually know exactly what it is. When we talk about absolute reality, the absolute reality is the fact that everything lacks an absolute truth, which is like sounds like some as if I was playing with words, but since everything is relative and everything is subjective, in other words, interdependent, if everything is subjective, this means that doesn't exist anything that is false. Because when we talk about truth, on the other side, there is on one side there is the true, and the other there is the false. And so the question is, okay, if what is the truth is relative, then does there exist something false? So to understand what is true, we also have to understand what is false. Let's imagine that we meet with someone, and at a certain point we have a different point of view about the same thing. That could happen, right? On a practical level, on a philosophical level. We let's try to see something more practical. You go there home, and you buy a very beautiful singing bowl at the shop, then you put it there at home, and you're very happy to having a new singing bowl. You put it on a place of respect, and then you get home. At a certain point, you don't find your singing bowl anymore, and you just go around and around, and you find out that it's in the garden and the dog is playing with it. And the other person says, look, I saw that there is that new bowl that also sounds quite well, and won't be kind of upset. That is not just a bowl for the dog. So here we have to go and see who is right and who is wrong. What is the truth? The question, the starting question to see whether the attributed value, the given name, is false or right, is whether the object in its whole is capable of sustaining the function and the characteristics attributed to it or not. This object, can it sustain the functions as a bowl, as a singing bowl, to play with it? Yes. So that is a correct perception. It's true that this is a singing bowl that plays, that is used to play for also meditation. Can this object sustain the characteristics of a bowl for a dog, the functions, the characteristics, and so on? Yes. And so it's true, both things are true. Then I could say, look, it could be many things, but I bought it, I paid for it, and so the bowl, we use it for something else. In this moment, it's a singing bowl, not the bowl for the dog. When we don't agree with someone on something, one of the first questions that we should ask ourselves is not who's right, but to ask ourselves the value that you attribute, the name that you give to a situation, to an object, to a person, and so on, because the name brings with itself some characteristics and some functions. A bowl, if I would call this like a chocolate cake, for as much as I can deeply believe in it, then it's not chocolate cake. It's like once there was like a chef who was. We've seen very many curious things at the center of Albagnano in the kitchen. Uh, we had like a kitchen with just biological things, and at a certain point, one one was buying things that were not biological, and then it was placing them like in the Guru Puja for a few days, and then it would say, then they become biological because they are blessed. And then talking to that person, I was asking, okay, what does it mean biological? Because you can make all the blessings of the word, energetical point of view, you can change something about that, but are the toxical components there inside the food? Is it a food that was cultivated in a certain way, and were some chemical products used? Yes, so then it cannot sustain the functions and the characteristics for as much as we can tell stories about it. You could also have like a biological certificate, but then that doesn't mean that it's actually biological. So that means that there are wrong perceptions. We are full of wrong perceptions of things to which we attribute a value and give a name that actually is not able to sustain. But when we have a different vision and I attribute a certain meaning and the object, the situation, also the material object, the person, being, the object of perception, is able to sustain those functions and characteristics, yes, then the value is correct. If what you say can be sustained, yes, then we're both right. Then we get into arguing what is most agreeable for both of us. If a person comes to me and asks me something, does it have characteristics of being an object that can sustain, like of being an object of avarice? So the same situation can be an object of avarice or generosity, or also an object of anger or compassion. I could say that this way of behaving is not right, you suck, and then it becomes an object of anger. Then I can look at the same situation and say, look, I'm really sorry that you behave in this way and that you're hurting yourself and the others. What is the difference between one and the other? Both are correct from the point of view of the capacity of sustaining the characteristics and functions. As an object of anger, it goes to increase the feeling of anger, of hatred, and it creates a reaction that is unhealthy. And as an object of compassion, it generates an interdependence, a dynamic that is positive. It's a bit like asking ourselves, but is the bottle half full or half empty? We could sit there and argue for like years. We could see it in both ways. The point is not what is the truth, because there are many truths. The point is what is convenient for me. To me, to you, to us. To me, is it convenient to think that it's half full or that it's half empty? To me, is it convenient to generate generosity or avarice, hatred or compassion? And so the same thing can be a lot or can be very little. It depends on how I look at it. And so it's beautiful to start from the fact that truth is that we live in a relative reality that is subjective. There is not one objective, solid truth. So, so if we start from the fact that okay, we have only one truth, is the fact that that truth is that we live in a reality where there is only the truth, that everything is relative. And this doesn't mean that there are infinite possibilities in the sense that everything is fine. There are many, many wrong perceptions that are false. And here we get into another subject that is very particular, but before getting into that, just another second to close this point well. In our everyday life, when we live, when we see something, in our most spontaneous way of seeing, of perceiving something, in a way that it's aware or not, we believe that we are living the reality, that what I see is what it's there. The question that I've already was asked many times is whether any of you, if you would ask yourself, okay, but can you see Lama? If you ask the person next to you, can you see Lama? The answer will be yes. But when you ask, do you see Lama as like, okay, can you hear the sound of the bell? Can you hear the sound of the bow? Actually, when I ask you, can you hear the sound of the bow? What I'm asking you, if I had to be really precise, is can you hear the sound that I'm hearing? When you ask, but can you see the Lama? What are you actually asking? That okay, are you seeing the Lama that I am seeing? Without philosophizing, the answer would be, how many Lamas are there? Lama Michel, how many Lama Michel do we have? Just one. Are you seeing the Lama that I'm seeing? The answer would be, because let's imagine how life would be if we would say no. It would be like an absolute chaos in everything, in every moment. We couldn't find like a meeting point in anything. It would be really chaotic. So, fortunately, we have this convention somehow inside of which we are able to function. But if we start philosophizing a bit and to reflect a bit, the person that you're seeing is the same than that the other person is seeing. No, because the process of seeing is like light touching the object, in this case touches me, and then goes back to you, and according to the types of material and the skin and so on, some frequencies of light are absorbed and others are reflected, and on the basis of this, colors are created, and then shapes are created out of the differences between one and the other. And so the eye perceives those waves and sends signals to the seeing consciousness that then is interpreted by the brains, and then the consciousness say, look, that there are these shapes, this color, and then we make like an inner search in our inner database that is made out of all of our concepts and experiences from the past, and we go and check, okay, what is that? It's a person. He has a beard, so it's a man. I know him, he's called Lama Michel. And all of this comes together with a series of emotions. And so, like, if someone feels that I've done some good to him, then it generates a certain feeling. Then, if a person feels that I've done harm, another feeling. So, when we find inside of ourselves this, then we go and attribute a name and a value. Eyes are different for each one of us, other than the position that we find ourselves. The seeing consciousness is different, and here we call it Galong on this. And on the part of the seeing consciousness, actually, there is one very beautiful thing. That is that our brain has a function that is that of sorting the information that we receive. That is, we receive through our senses an enormous quantity of information. And according to our needs, of our desires, and so on, we sort this information and we give importance to some of it and put away some other parts. And so, even if the eyes would be the same, then the result will be different anyway because we give priority to different things. So, the seeing consciousness will be different. It's like when I get into like some a forest, then all that I see is just a bunch of green things. A person that has more knowledge than me of plants then can see a lot more things. So what I'm seeing and what anyone sees is different. But the point is not whether it's different or not, but we believe that what we see is the reality. The main point is that when I see someone, I believe that I'm seeing the person, not my version of the person. When I'm hearing something, I'm hearing the singing bowl, I believe that I'm hearing the bowl, not my version of that sound. And so our tendency is to believe that we see the truth, that what I see, what I perceive is the truth. This is the reality, this is the truth, that's it. And this is one aspect. The only the only truth is that reality is relative. Can be many shades, many different perceptions, as much as wrong perceptions. There is another fundamental point. Since since the moment that I see something and I think that that is the reality, then naturally happens that there are people who see it differently from me. One of the things that we try to do is try to find people that think and perceive in us in the same way to give validity to what we believe is the reality. When I talk with one, two, three people, among my relationships that think in the same way, they tell me, yes, this is a singing bowl, it's not a bowl for the dog. What do? We generalize one of the things that we can do very well, and we say everyone thinks like this. So you can see that I'm right. And so when someone will think differently, then that person will be wrong because everyone thinks like that. And the more we reinforce this, the more we reinforce the idea that that is the truth. That can also be a correct perception. I'm not saying that, but the fact that we grasp in a strong way to one version, to our truth, it takes away the possibility of opening the eyes to many other possibilities, many other aspects. And for this, one of the aspects that I believe is that it's more dangerous to always be together with people that think in the same way than us rather than being with people that think differently from us. The other day, the other evening, yesterday evening, I don't remember. No, the other day, yeah. I was in a meeting, I was talking about some things, and I remember that something about Lama Michel Rinpoche when I went to complain about with him, because at the center there were different people that were participating to the various meetings, various things of the administration, and so on. And in particular, there was one person that every time that an idea, like a proposal, was brought, categorically he had a different view. Like for a while it's okay, and then at a certain point I got tired. I went to Lama Gangchen and he said, okay, Rinpoche, okay, it's fine, but this is tiring. Like every time that you're thinking in a direction, then he always has to say something against it, and so on. And Rinpoche said, so this person, whatever is being said from the others, always can find an opposite, different view. Wow, how beautiful, wonderful. We need different views. Okay, I got it. We need to face it. There is not much hope, but fortunately, it's much more sane to be together with people that think differently and challenge our perception of reality rather than constantly reinforcing a limited vision. Our tendency is to want to be together with people that think in the same way like we do, because at the end we are lazy, we don't really feel like growing so much and to open ourselves. We just want to reinforce our vision, to also reinforce our ego, because actually what we want is to be right. Ah, I am right. You see? And because I want to be right, then I find those that think like me. Actually, the most beautiful thing is when we are with a person that thinks differently than us. And my experience is when I was with someone that would think very differently from what I did, but at the same time had like some logical coherence and so on. In talking, discussing together, the possible results are of two types for me. Either I reinforce my vision or I change it, and both are fine. I've told the story already many times of this man on the plane. It was one of these moments for me. And Lama Gangchen was sitting in front of me, and I was in the back. And next to me there was like a Russian man talking an English that was kind of very kind of hard in some sense. At a certain point, it tells me, "But you dressing like that? Why are you?" "No, we are the Lamas, we're Buddhists." "Ah, yes, you are so selfish." Can you explain me better? Yes, you want to be good, peaceful, just feeling good, at peace with everything, running away from the difficulties of life. I would like to see you like that with a job, the family, and all things. It's easy to just run away from the world, all the difficulties from the world, and to sit all day like that in silence and to say, how beautiful is life, how peaceful. You're selfish, you're just running away from the world. And I told him, you're right. But in the case of my master meeting, this doesn't apply, because actually what happens is that when you take responsibilities that have to do with a lot of people, then problems are multiplied. There are also expectations that people have on us. It's not just like parents, children, wife, husband, and so on. There are many people projecting and expecting. So, because the guru is wonderful as long as he says what you want to hear. Also, the opposite happened recently to me. So I like that, because I that person gave me a vision that made my vision more rich. A person that wants to follow a monastic life as a lama, to run away from life, that doesn't work. I've seen that many times. Trying to go to a monastery to run away because that person wouldn't be able to be well in the normal world. Also, usually that didn't work also on the other side. But when one is able to be at ease in society, and then one wants to get deeper into a certain aspect, that works. This is to say that there is no need to be afraid of who is different, who thinks differently and has a different perception. The difference makes more rich, because either that shows us uh, something that we didn't see before, or it reinforces our vision. And this starts from the principle that truth is reality, and the more we have a complex and deep vision of things, the more we can have a coherent vision. There is also another aspect, actually, about truth that is even more complex, because as long as I'm talking about whether this object can sustain or not the characteristics and functions attributed to it, then it's easy. But we also have another fundamental part of what we call truth, and it's the fact that during our life we create and we give continuity to stories, to narratives. And we look for stories, narratives that can give coherence to our feelings. Let's take like random feeling. For example, if I feel lonely and I feel abandoned, I feel rich, I feel poor, I feel strong, I feel like a victim, and so on. I have a feeling. When we have a feeling, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, one of the first things that we go and do is look for around us a narrative that gives coherence to the feeling that we have. I don't know if you ever experienced a strong inner feeling without any external coherence. I have had this experience, I've thought about it sometimes, and that was something that showed me this dynamic. I was finding myself in the airport of Calcutta. It was like tremendously hot. I was going to Kathmandu. I had to change the flight. The airport, they were doing some work there, so I had to go with the cart through the parking, all full of luggage, and the cart was just getting stuck. There were at least like 45 degrees. I was late to catch the flight. It was not a pleasant situation. And I got such a rush of joy. It was something like, wow, how beautiful. Like, I was so happy, something that would come from the inside, and I couldn't even contain it. And I looked at me. I was like, I don't have a reason for this. I couldn't find it. I was not coming from anything that was so special. I was not going towards anything that was so special. Nothing particular was happening, if not just a very unpleasant situation somehow. And I told myself, okay, well, not necessarily I can find something outside. It's just something that is happening inside that doesn't necessarily match what is going on outside. And our tendency is to look outside for an explanation for what is happening inside. There is also a study of which I read once for research of a medical doctor that got to the conclusion that we judge our sensations, emotions. While she was doing the research, she worked in the lab. One day she goes out. It was like 10 or 11 in the evening, and one of her collaborators said, "Okay, let's just go to the pub. Now it's late. Okay." And then she said, "Okay, it's fine for once." And at a certain point, as she was in the pub and she drank like a beer, she starts to feel like some warmth coming up and a sensation of something in the belly. Something was a bit strange, and the man was in front of her. And then she thought, ah, maybe I like him. I didn't know. Then maybe a bit more. Then she drinks another beer, and then she feels that warmth coming up, that sensation in the belly, and then she feels okay. Then she takes another evening to meet with him again. Then after this she gets home or like that, and she realizes that she has some intestinal kind of flu. So she said that if she would have felt the same thing as she was home, she would have reacted some completely differently. And this is to show that we judge what we what we feel on the basis of the context in which we find ourselves, and we're not capable at all to understand what we are actually feeling. And our main tendency is that I feel something and I look for a narrative that can give a coherence of what I'm feeling. And I sit on this narrative. I'm tired, then there is a reason for which I'm tired. I'm sad, there is a reason for which I'm sad. I feel lonely, there is a narrative for that. Then someone could say, yes, Nama, but I am traumatized. Look, that I feel lonely because really, when I was a kid, yes, but when you were a kid, now you're not lonely. Ah, yes, I am. We not only create narratives, but in an unconscious way, we create situations and we look for them to justify the emotions and feelings that we have. These narratives exist both on the individual level and collective level. So I create my own narrative as a person, as a family, that I share with my family, wife, husband, a narrative as a religion, uh, and so on. The more people believe in that narrative, the more that narrative will become the reality, the truth. Where very often many of our narratives are nothing else but a way that we give ourselves to try to find coherence with what we feel, to see and welcome some feelings that we have. The feelings maybe also arose in front of a situation, but for us it's not really important the truth, like what happened to you. What is important for us is a coherent narrative. That's all that we care about. What happens also with the stories that we create? A person comes to me, it comes to my mind, like once a very intelligent man, guy, he was able to make very beautiful logical paths, but very often we will get to the conclusion that from my point of view that was completely wrong. Also bringing him to very confused, difficult situations. And if you will go and look at his logical process, there was a coherence, but starting from the assumption that was an assumption that was wrong. So when I start from a starting point that is incoherent, that is not correct, and I use that as a starting point, then I can build on that a wonderful logic and that is perfectly coherent, but the result will never be coherent because the basis was not. This is clear. And so sometimes is almost more difficult to see our own dynamics, our own narratives that are unhealthy when we a bit less intelligent rather than when we are more intelligent. We create a logical process, an explanation, reasonings to give a whole structure to that, when actually it's based on something that is false. And so it's really important for us to remember ourselves that we live inside of a story. Stories that we tell ourselves, that the others told us and keep on telling us, we tell stories and stories. Once in Brazil, some journalists asked me, Lama, do you believe in reincarnation? I said, yes. I believe actually, since when I was very young, for me it had always been something very natural. And at a certain point, the journalist was like, now I ask him a difficult question. And what if there was no reincarnation? Much better. I believe in reincarnation. But when I look at the world around me, if with death ends everything, then better. I don't see a problem in that. Ah, but if you believe and then it's not there, then you lost your life in believing. No, because like in believing in reincarnation, it brings me to a more coherent also view where I take more care of things, other than taking care of also the future generations. I take care of what continues. But the point is that when we have a narrative, when we have a story in which we believe, very often we want to know if the story is true, whether our story is true or not, where actually what matters the most is not whether that story is true or not, but where does it bring us? Because actually, at the end, what we need as human beings is to relate, is to feel. We need to be able to find ways to relate in a balanced, healthy, respectful way. We need feelings of love, of gratitude, of satisfaction, of peace. That's what we really need. That's what matters the most. What we feel and the way that we relate. A few times I've said, if someone comes with a religion of Mickey Mouse and we do the yoga of Mickey Mouse, the meditation of the self-generation as Mickey Mouse, or the whole philosophy or of Mickey Mouse, if that works, well, that's great. If this brings the person to develop a state of peace that is profound, of satisfaction, of happiness, of joy, if that helps to relate in a way that is more harmonious with the others, yes, that's very welcome. And so, really, I believe that we should go beyond uh, this obsession with the truth. It's also a bit like when we talk about traumas. When we check a trauma of someone, like ours or someone else's, the important thing is not what happened, but how I lived it. It's not important really whether that moment you actually abused me or not, or whether your perception was that of abuse or not, but how did I live it? What wound did that leave in me? That's what I have to face today. There are many studies on this, where, for example, there were certain kinds of situations that, as long as a certain name was not attributed to it, that then a person will not see that situation, that thing, that aspect. In some countries, some kind of relationship situations are normal. And since when one says, this is an abuse and this and that, and the person starts to see that in a certain way, also an attitude, there is also an attitude of getting traumatized for something that has already happened, even if the person didn't have symptoms of that. Because this is also about the stories that we tell ourselves, the narratives that we create. This doesn't mean that whatever is fine. If I treat you with aggressiveness and violence, that behavior cannot sustain the characteristics and functions, for example, of a behavior that is healthy, that is sane, that does good. So it's not relative in that sense, because good and bad is relative. It depends on how you see it. It's not really like that, because when I act with aggressiveness and violence towards someone, that action, for as much as one tries to see it as a positive thing that is good and so on, cannot sustain the functions and characteristics of something that is good, because it just can't. I don't know if this is clear. So we shouldn't get into the extreme that everything is fine. There is what is a virtuous action and what is a non-virtuous action. Virtuous, positive, is what in its interaction brings a result of physical and mental well-being. Negative, non-virtuous, is what with its interaction brings a suffering that is physical and mental. That's it. Something that can't sustain a feeling of well-being that is mental and physical cannot be positive for as much as one can believe in it, or and the other way around. And so narratives inevitably are parts of our life, are part of our lives. Religion is made of stories, politics, economy, also money itself is just a story, something in which we all believe and we give value to that. I remember a scene of a movie that I really liked, where at the end of a whole story, the thieves steal all the money, all the gold, then they give it back, so everyone is happy. That the gold, and they found out that the gold is fake. And then what do they say? The important thing is that everyone believes that it's true, because everyone was happy. So, for example, also to sustain Italian economy, there is also like some gold, as I know, that is locked somewhere. Does someone touch it? Does it have like a physical, mechanical function? Is it there doing something in particular to sustain the economy, or isn't it just anything else but an object to maintain the story that okay, there is value? Maybe it's just like something painted of gold, and everyone believes that has that value. Who cares if it's actually gold? If you don't have to melt it and do something else with it, there will be fake gold. Yes, but in that sense, the function can be sustained. Also, gold itself is nothing else but a, a whole of parts to which a meaning is attributed, and the value is completely relative. To me, it has already happened. Once they gave me a dorje, like this object, that means the union of wisdom and bliss. And I received a dorje a bit bigger than this in gold, just completely gold. And I put it there on the altar, and I sat to look at it, and then I asked myself, what do I do with it? Why is that worth more than the other? That is done of also actually I don't know of what metal, because it's more beautiful, because it's a precious metal to which is given this value. But it's precious since the moment that I sell it. Will I sell it? No. So why is it worth more than the other? Why is it special? And I found myself with a problem that I didn't know what to do with it until at a certain day my masters okay, I thought, okay, I found something to do with this, then I gave it as a present, the most precious thing that I had in that sense, and I offered it. Maybe, okay, if it's precious because it's shiny, then we make like rings with LEDs. But it's a matter of a value that one attributes to something. And just like these are stories. And this is to say that we are made of stories. We live in a world made of stories. And somewhere we have this strange idea of wanting somehow to validate our stories. Yes, my story is a real story. I'm Buddhist, so it means that the Buddhist story is the most true one, and so on. But eventually, what is what is really the point? What is really worthy? Whether these stories can make us reason and relate and transform us deeply in a non-conceptual way. That's the most important thing. It's a bit like a person that is sick that believes that can get better. We sometimes we ask ourselves, but can you really get better? Can you really heal? A person one day told me, okay, science look at this aspect. So in medicine you have like statistics and then specific cases which are extremely complex. When you're in front of someone that is sick, what is the cure? But there is one fact that believing that that person can be healed will bring through to the healing, towards the healing, and this makes the whole difference. The point is not whether what I believe in is the truth actually or not, but the point is whether the point is not whether my narrative right is the right one, but whether my narratives, my stories bring me through a process of development of gratitude, satisfaction, stability, love, respect, joy, or whether they bring me to a state of more conflict, of more tension, and so on. Me, I believe in the fact that stories, narratives, and that we carry on from generation to generation that bring to more and more conflict, more tension. That's what we need to change. I remember that there are like some friends, people that I met, and this was like many years ago. They were working in Gaza in Palestine in contexts where there were kids growing, both from Israel and Palestine, that were growing up together in a mixed schools contexts where kids were allowed to be together without having a specific influence, and that was one of the best approaches. And the strong thing is that the day that they were best friends for many years, f- and but the day that they received a certain narrative and they believed in that, then they became enemies. Stories are tremendously powerful, and we need to change stories. For example, So when we change a narrative, also the reality changes. And this is one of the things that strangely is like the most powerful thing that exists. I don't know if this is clear, but not powerful in the world in general, but powerful inside our own lives, inside of our own stories. It has a tremendous power. And like for example, the story "and they lived happily afterwards." I'm not against weddings, but I believe that a relationship between two people could be like the same gender, of different gender. It doesn't matter. The important thing is is whether it's good for both people. But I see that in our society, it our reality revolves around these taboos that of death, money, and sex, because it's something that it's judged. Even if we talk about it, it's something where there is like something there. Yes, we talk about it, but it's always like a taboo. And the strangest thing is that in our society, these three things are extremely diffused, quite common, but there is a taboo. And so everyone in general has a relationship with money, but that's a relationship where one has difficulties. Sometimes just to talk about money, tension is created. I don't know, maybe in Rome, because you say, no, what is the rule in Milan when you go to a restaurant? You just divide, okay, but do you divide the same, or if one took something more, then has to pay the difference and so on? It depends. I don't know. And so there are thousands of possibilities. Money is a taboo. You just need to look at how many discussions in family, how many difficulties in talking about it. Sex is a subject that is also taboo, and you can also just see it in the difficulties that you have to transmit like a sane vision to kids, and the fact that there is like an identity, a matter of identity, and in the teaching, sharing, there are many tensions, difficulties. And then the taboo for excellence is death. The strange thing is that money is everywhere, sex, uh, and advertisement of basically anything, so to speak. There is sex in between, also in television, movies, and then it's a taboo. And then death, whatever movie, whatever video game, news, there is death everywhere. And then you can't talk about it. I don't know, you look at an action movie, and from the beginning to the end, how many people died? I don't know, hundreds. And then you have the person next to you that is about to die, and you can't talk about death. You're strange. And so you can read in the news how many people, I don't know how many people died, and then you cannot face uh, the subject of death with a person that is close to you. So that we have many taboos, but these are three taboos that are very strong. With Lama Gangchen, I've learned one of the things that he transmitted to me is to go beyond taboos, to be able to face everything, whatever, in an open and sane way. And also in the aspect of how you build a family, what are the relationships. mm, I don't know if I was reading once, there was like a French researcher. He wrote about an ethnical group of the Himalayas, and he said that was some just a small population of people that were very remote, and they had still a kind of way of living where there was like the mother and the children and the grandma, and so it was all based on the mother. So you would always live with the mother and the brothers. When the woman will get to the age that she was ready to to have sexual intercourse, then she was given a room and she was open to receive any man that would come. If she remains pregnant, then that's her son. That's not the son of him. There were also cases of people that then, for many years, I created a relationship, and she also was like witnessing a case that was like a taboo for her. She and okay, in our family here, in that population, like a couple had some a man has some difficulties and went to live with a woman, and there was a case that was taboo. So we have like our own stories of what is right, what is wrong. Also, just pretending that there isn't anything, that everything is fine and we can do what we want, then that also doesn't work, because actually we inherit some stories or we are part of those. We are made of these stories, and as the more we are aware that stories are just stories. They can be created, they can be tossed away, they can be changed. It becomes difficult to do this when we are convinced that the story is not the story, but it's that is the truth. And that doesn't mean that the story in which we believe doesn't have true aspects. Yes, but it's not the truth. And the most powerful revolutions that man has lived up to today, they are just based on narratives, changes on the stories that are being told. And it's here that I leave to each one of you the challenge to challenge the stories in which we believe and that which we inherit. There are many stories in this case. For example, comes to my mind once a couple in the United States, they were following a story that was transmitted to them that happiness came from a certain type of career, earning a lot of money, having a beautiful house, the car, the children, a whole thing that say that happiness was in that. And so those um, that couple was very intelligent persons, and they studied a lot, did master, and they bought a beautiful house, a very expensive car. The, they have children, the perfect American dream. And then at a certain point, they look around them, and they're like, okay, we have done all of this, but we live like crazy to sustain all of this. We earn a lot of money, and we spend a lot of money. And at the end, we're not able to dedicate things to money, time to our passions. She had the passion of dance, the passion of him was mountain. The fact is that they didn't have time to sustain things that were actually giving joy to them. So, to make the story short, they made a radical change They sell the house, they buy a minimal house where there was the space for what they needed without having to get mortgage. They both get fired, they find like some part-time job that will be enough to cover the costs of their needs. Then they sell the car and they start to have a simple life where the new story, the new narrative was that the less you have, the better you feel. Because when you have too many things, then life is consumed by those things. They start to have less and less, and they start to see that they have much more time at their disposal. So during the week, she starts to dance, and he starts to walk in the mountains, and they start to change, and they see that their lives transform completely. But what created that transformation was the courage of challenging a story that was given to them and to find a different narrative. Because, I repeat, the point is not whether the story that we have is real or false, but whether it's good or not for us. We live, for example, in a narrative that is based on the fact that the more I have, the better I feel, where we have one of our main refuges. It's not Buddha Dharma and Sangha, but it's buying. We take refuge on that. Rather than saying I take refuge in Buddha Dharma and Sangha, we take those are the temples that we believe in. We go to pilgrimage in shopping malls. Then we have this strange idea that the less I spend, the better it is. So we have all the outlets and these kind of things. But what happens is that it's a story that we tell ourselves. We tell ourselves a story that I should have more, I should appear in a certain way, and so on. And then, together with this story, there are the physical aspects. When I am in front of something new, that generates dopamine. When I generate some desire and I obtain what I want, that generates dopamine. And this experience somehow also goes there to say, look, that you can see that my story is true, and we don't see the side effects. And so, really, for example, when we leave something where we are left badly, like disappointed from a person that behaves in a certain way, we are disappointed and there is like some sour taste left, that's a story that remains with us as well. Is that story good or bad for us? Why can't we tell ourselves a different story? Because it's not true. Because you believe that that is true? You want to believe that, yeah, I understand. True in the sense of the truth, that is also not true. There are many other possibilities. One needs a lot of courage to do it, a lot of will. And I believe that in the times that we find ourselves, one of the difficulties, one of the biggest challenges that we find ourselves in is really to challenge the stories that we have. Because the narratives are more and more solid and generalized. Like last time that there were the elections, I went to vote. It was like my first time voting. I go to vote. Okay, what do I vote? I don't know. I never got interested in politics actually. I have my own preferences, but I cannot just vote on basing myself on what do I like the most as a person. That is not responsible. So in my ignorance, I told myself, okay, I should try to understand and I thought there would be like an easy way to find out what would one propose, like a program of a person or not. It was completely difficult. You almost need like a master degree. I don't know your experience on this. In China, since like 3,000 years, you had like studies for public administration. But the point is that at the end, I made my own research and I got to my own conclusion and tried to make my choice in the most coherent way possible. It was very, very difficult, very tiring. But we somehow need to see that there are some things that are given to us. We cannot simply just follow blindly. We need to make our own path. When we have made our own path, and I've seen it in my own process in deciding who to vote. Okay, I could see that there were people that I would like. Maybe I would like some stories or visions and things that were there. Then there will be the friends saying something, so there is a whole thing that is created. And also, also in the Buddhist context, now I don't want to get into the details. Different Buddhist traditions have like also political preferences somehow. That's also interesting to see. But anyway, what I saw is that I wanted to go beyond that. I want to be able to look at that person that I would have never voted at all, and I would want to try to listen, to see, to study what she has to propose with an open mind, without putting myself on the defense, and some effort was required. And so, if we allow ourselves, as we have already said in the beginning, to get to know what is different and to open to different narratives, then probably at the end we can get more rich together, where your narrative makes my narrative more rich. And so I invite you to start from a position of non-attachment to our own narratives, starting from what happened today. I don't know. To me, it has happened that someone will be disappointed from a behavior that I had. I don't know. Where I believed that I was doing something good. I don't know if it has ever happened to you. What is our tendency? To put ourselves on the defense. What? I did something good. You were disappointed, but that's your problem, not mine. I, and what I it was like a process to get to this. But in these situations, it was like what I got to. It was to say, okay, don't get into the defense. I am at peace with myself and with what I did, because my awareness, my knowledge made me do that. But I realized that to you was not didn't work for as much as I tried to do something good. What could I do more or different in order to change it next time? Once I was catching a train here at the central station many years ago. Many years ago, I would always go by train from here to Albagnano, and I had my own fixation that I was having fun, and I would calculate how many minutes I had from here to Albagnano. I calculated the time, and what I did, I also remember it was like 12 minutes. Where I calculated like the various possibilities, walking or with metro. So I will calculate the time that the train will leave, like the split minute. Usually it would be that I will get on the train and the train will leave. I would do it in a relaxed way, and I really liked it. Then I also learned that when I had to go with other people, I had to respect the pace of the others. And also now, when I get to the airport, I want to be kind of the last one doing the check-in. But anyway, we're going to be on the plane together. So once I get the train, and the train is literally about to leave, and there is a lady with a lot of luggage that was having some difficulty to put them in the train. And so what I do is to take two of the bags of the lady and to help her. And I took so many bad words from her. The lady thought that she she didn't see me coming and didn't ask the permission. Other than my motivation was to help her, and that I helped her to get the luggage on. One should ask, okay, can I help? Because otherwise one thinks that maybe you're stealing the luggage. I don't know. I remember that she was like super aggressive with me, and reflecting on it, I said to myself, yeah, she's right. It doesn't matter whether my motivation was right or not. Ah, look, I'm helping you and still you treat me badly. We put ourselves on the defense. And this is one of the things that when we really when we put ourselves on the defense, we close the doors to be able to receive constructive criticism. I don't know. It's one of the classical things that we do. But actually, if I don't put myself on the defense when some criticism comes, then there is a different narrative from the one that I have, and a person that has a different perception, we should appreciate that and be open to that. I can assure you that a really big quantity of conflicts then can just go away. But we want to be like the owners of the truth. We're not talking about like profound, total truths, but just like daily things. Because I don't know how much you discuss about philosophy. Maybe yes, maybe you do. Maybe you have very strong discussions because one says that phenomena are objective and the other says that they are subjective, and we sit there arguing, fighting about that. Yeah, that's nice. I've seen very heavy and strong when I was studying, but usually discussions are about, okay, you have said this is true, this is not true. We have our own dynamics. We start from we should start from the principle that is my own perception. That is nothing else than an aspect of a truth. That is a reflection of something that is inside of me. There is also another fundamental point. And it's crazy how even when we know, then we keep on looking for a solid reality, solid truth. It's like when you ask the Buddhist, sorry, a bit of sarcasm, and you ask, but what are the causes of suffering? The causes of suffering, of course, they are the mental defilements. So it comes from the anger, the envy, the attachment, jealousy, and hatred, and so on, which their turn are generated by this selfishness, the obsession with self-gratification that in its turn starts out of the grasping to an intrinsic existence of phenomena. And all of this is summed with the actions that one does, and then the karmic results are generated in the person as feelings of suffering and so on. 3 minutes are passed, and then the person is like, it's your fault. So one replaces mental defilements and karma with the other person. Why do you suffer? Because you've said this and that, you've done this and that. It's like when one says, the karma, the law of karma, look how what a beautiful karma I have. So when something good happens, it's like, what a beautiful karma we have. When something bad happens, then it's fault of the other. So we should really be careful, because we need a lot of sincerity with ourselves to really be able to review our narratives and to accept that we live in a subjective reality. There is a poem, very beautiful. Maybe another time we can get deeper into it. It's a poem written in Tibetan. I got to know this in a strange context. I was in a bagnano during a ceremony, a puja, and I was getting bored. Somehow I was there, I was bored, and I just took like a random book from the table, and I started like going through it, page after page. There were all this text written from a master. At a certain point, I found myself in front of a drawing. I was bored. I didn't want to read, so I was looking at drawings. Tibetan's books don't have a lot of figures. They have drawings. At a certain point, there is like that drawing, and then I read the poem, and it was one of the most beautiful poems that I've ever read. That did a lot of good to me, and it's structured in the following way. So you have like 9 squares, 3 by 3, and in the top left one there is appears, and still appears, and anyway it's empty. Then you should read, okay, first you read like from the left to right, then you read from left to right diagonally, then you read from right to left on the bottom, and then you go back to the beginning, which means appears and it's empty anyway. It's empty and it's true anyway. It's empty and it's false, and anyway it appears. Then if you read from top to bottom, there are the fake views, wrong views. Appears that it's true. It's empty and it's false. Here we could spend hours talking about it, but let's make a quick reading about what we talk about today. It appears and anyway it's empty. It means that the reality that appears to me, the narratives that I tell, appear as if they were real, as if there was the truth. When I play the bowl, it appears as if there was the truth, the sound. So when I ask you, can you hear? I'm asking you whether you can hear the sound that I'm hearing. Our narratives appear to us as if they were the truth. So they appear, but anyway they're empty from being an objective truth. They are empty from being an objective truth, but anyway they are true. They are true, but anyway they are false, because they don't have an absolute truth. They are false, but anyway they appear. So that means that our narratives are there, they move us, they can do anything, and it's not because that they are empty, that it's totally false. No, it's true, it's there and it's true. But anyway, it's not an absolute reality, it's an objective reality. So it appears, and anyway, it's empty. It's empty of an intrinsic, an autonomous, objective, intrinsic existence. It doesn't exist as it appears. It appears, and anyway, it's empty. It's empty, and anyway, it's true. It's true, and anyway, it's false. It's false, and but still it appears. And the wrong view would be it appears, and so it's true. It appears as being an objective reality, and so it is. It's empty, and so it's false, because it doesn't exist in an objective way, so it doesn't exist. These are the two wrong views, and we live in between this, and we try to fit reality into this. If they appear, they must be true. If not, then it must be false. In these few words, you can sum up like something like very profound. And so it appears, but anyway, it's empty. It's empty, but still it's true. It's true, but still it's false. It's false, but anyway, it appears. And this, for me, is one of the keys really for life, and it's really something to be applied in every field. Let's try to apply it each one in each one of our narratives, because when you tell me your story, it's your appearance, your perception, and it's true, but it's empty. It's empty of an objective experience, existence, but it's true. And it's not because that it's true that it's not false, but still it's your appearance, it's your reality. Comes to my mind like a hebraic joke where it's told that the wife goes to a rabbi, and she says, you know, my husband, he did this and that. There is a particular situation. She goes to complain to the rabbi, and he says, yeah, you're right. And after a few days, the husband comes, you know, my wife, look what she did, look here and there, and so on. And the rabbi says, yeah, you're right. And a few days later, they both come together, and they're like, sorry, but first one tells his own version, and then you say that you're right, and we say that we're both right. Who's right then? You're both right. There are many aspects. It appears, but still it's empty. It's empty, but still it's true. It's true, but still it's false. And it's false, but still it appears. And when we're able to understand this, we can see how actually, how can I say, changes are much more at hand than what we can imagine, both from the personal point of view, from the spiritual point of view, mental, psychological, from the familiar, friend, family, relational, work context, also on the social level, like local, national, international, collective level. A change, both in the positive and negative sense, is much more at hand than we can imagine. It's just it starts from a change of narrative. And the interesting thing is that we constantly change narratives, whether we are aware of it or not. For example, about the bathrooms in Bagnano. When I did the project, we didn't have the physical space to put two different bathrooms, so I put one bathroom for male and female. Okay, we're in a temple. I never liked the bathrooms where you have like very thin divisor walls.
and you can smell everything and you can hear everything. That's not the nicest thing. So I told myself, okay, let's make some nice um air system where every bathroom has its own thing. And we took, I took great care of the bathrooms. Also the door that you open it like a book, because it has happened many times to me that you get into a bathroom and you almost have to jump on the WC, on the toilet, to then close the door. And the technician says, "Ah, no, it's not right, because then, as a norm, you should have like separated bathrooms." Then I go to another person and says, "This is a place of cult. Do whatever you want. This is out of category." And then I told myself, okay, what problem is there, like in a temple, if like a man and a woman meet each other? And at a certain point, I received this email, message from Google Maps. I don't know why it arrived to me, but anyway, it said, "Give me some information about your activity, about the temple." And I read the questions, and among the questions was like, "Do you have gender-neutral bathrooms?" And I said, "Yes, we are modern." When I built the bathrooms like that, it's not that I thought about it. I really don't. As long as one can do what he needs to do comfortably, that's good enough. But what happens is that what it made me reflect a lot on is that a matter, a subject that was seen in a bad way, like until a little while ago, now it's like a plus, something good, also on a collective level. So this means that there is a change in the narrative, in the collective narrative, that starts out of the individual narrative. I recently was in some schools in Verbania, on the day on women. We can see many aspects, but what is being tried, what's also there is like a change of narrative that is being made. In violence, one of the things that sustains violence is a sense of superiority. If I am superior to you, then I have right on you, and then this justifies a violence towards you. This is a narrative, a story that is told. It's like once in Brazil, as I was on a boat, and a person showed me the place where you would bring slaves. And seeing that, I asked myself, but people that were living during that time where slavery was normal in Brazil, were they all bad people? Because now, if someone here as like a slave, what would we say? Is that seen like a good person? You have like is it really that all the people at the time were mean people, or were they just influenced by a collective narrative? We, for example, today, fortunately, that narrative collapsed. We are in a phase where there is a gradual change of narrative towards animals. Because, for example, I got to know just a while ago that in Switzerland there are some laws towards the rights of animals, for example, in farms, where animals have the right of spending a few minimum hours a day outside. This is a change of narrative, and that's what we need. And the beauty is that when we go through the inner path of changing our narratives, then we are changing the narratives of the world. And here I invite you, I repeat once again to conclude, I invite all of us to have the courage to challenge the narratives in which we find ourselves. To challenge doesn't mean to go against, it means to, to, to put them in discussion. Are they good to me or not? If it's not good for me, then bye bye. We'll try to look for another narrative to replace it with. And this is really important. Other than the fact, and here it comes a much personal level, of observing our own internal dynamics when we try to find narratives to justify our needs, traumas, and so on. Our images. Last Monday, talking in a bagnano, I made the example, one of the narratives that are funny somehow are the voices of that person that put oneself on the defense. Okay, I know that I shouldn't drink the water, but you can see that the other is also drinking the water. So one narrative that I build is to look for someone else that is also doing the wrong thing to justify my thing. Another narrative of putting oneself on the defense is to say, but I'm not so bad, like I'm also doing that thing good. You just want to see the bad side. And then there is the narrative of victimizing oneself. But it's not my fault, it's because of the other who told me this way and this and that. Why do we do this? Because we identify ourselves in the sense that, okay, if I do something bad, then I am bad. It has already happened to me to find myself in front of someone. I don't know, that person placed the bowl here. Look, the singing bowl shouldn't be here. But I didn't want to do it on purpose. Look, that it was told me. I don't want to know that. I am just simply saying, okay, next time the bowl, just put it more like that. We're just talking about the bowl. It's not a judgment on you. But actually, it seems so difficult to be able to openly admit our mistakes and not to take them personally. Because we have this tendency of judging ourselves as a person instead of judging the action. But this is also another subject. But we create narratives to try to justify and sustain a certain image of ourselves, to sustain a certain conduct. So we victimize ourselves, we blame the others, we go through a whole system of dynamics to be able to sustain some unhealthy narratives rather than going against our ego. I don't know if this is clear. And so it's important to see that I am not those behaviors and I can change them. I can change my narratives. Let's try as a first step. This is to conclude. First step is to see and acknowledge, have awareness of them. When we develop awareness, someone has already told me, okay, Lama, it was better when I didn't know, because now I see what I do, that I'm not, that it's not right, and then I am disappointed about myself. But when there is this weakness, it means that we have taken the first step. We have gained awareness that allows us to go in another direction. The second step is to start to not nourish a certain behavior. So I see some narratives that are unhealthy, I try to follow them. I keep following them. I breathe and I tell myself, okay, it's not really like that. It's me who's seeing things in a coherent way. I see reality in a solid way, yeah, as if that was my truth. And slowly I can see the narrative as it's arising, and I am able to not follow it. And then slowly it changes, and then I can generate another narrative. And one last thing, how can we change narrative in the most direct way? Through our words. Speech has a tremendous power of changing our way of living. The more I complain, the more I reinforce the narrative that things are not fine and so on. The more I am thankful, the more I generate a narrative that I have enough things. To ask oneself, for example, is everything fine? Then what is the person looking for what is not fine? Then if you're asking, is everything bad? Then one is like, okay, no, it's not everything bad. One goes and find what is actually good. And it's interesting to see that it's just one question that changes the narrative of the story, what we go and look for. So one wakes up and there is rain. Ah, what a bad day. Why? Why is rain bad? Rain is fundamental. Water is what gives us life. How beautiful that there is water to nourish life. And then whether I don't like it, okay, it's not that word, it's just made out of me. There are many plants that must be happy about rain. Why is it a bad day? Am I at the center of the universe? Then one slowly asks himself and starts to change the way of saying things. What a beautiful day of rain. And so to change the way of talking and then slowly to change the way of thinking and our narratives, then we can also go beyond that, where we slowly also choose with awareness the narratives that we tell ourselves, to our children also, to friends, because stories create and build our collective narrative, the famous and they lived happily afterwards. If it was like Buddhist, that you would go write, okay, uh, they reached enlightenment and they lived happily afterwards. Or maybe, but so I ask you, what we tell ourselves to try to bring home, to remember, to write, to really bring it to daily life. Because at the end, Buddhism itself is actually nothing else but a story that is being told. That in my experience, it works. The story that helps to do what? To be more in harmony, more at peace. There are other stories that work, eh? Let's remember one last time, at the end, what we care about is not what is the but is whether the stories in which we believe and that we follow bring us to harmony, to joy, to more peace, to more healthy relationships. This is what really matters to us. Now let's make our dedications. at dawn or dusk, at night or midday. May the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to obtain all realizations and to sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Just one thing that came to my mind and then it would go away if I don't share in this moment. It's completely fine to see that narratives are subjective, but we should also be able to respect the narratives of the others and that they live inside of their own narratives. Because otherwise it's like a story that a person goes to a place and they tell this person, okay, you can live here, we give you, you can stay here, live here, we give you food, you can take care of the garden, okay, but this is a sacred tree and you shouldn't cut it. And the person cuts the tree. And the person says, so you have an object to work with your attachment. The fact that that person has a different narrative that sees the person as an object of an attachment that's his own narrative, then that doesn't mean that one is not shouldn't respect the narratives of the other. So then what happened? They sent him away. So in order to live together, we should also we should understand that narratives are related, but we should also respect the narratives of the others. Thank you all. Have a good evening.